I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
Thanks for sticking with me. I'll be back Wednesday night. Don Lemon Tonight starts right now. Hey, Don.
Can't wait to see you on Wednesday, Sarah Seidner. Have a good one. This is Don Lemon Tonight, and we're going to talk about mystery. There's a mystery, a surprise that nobody saw coming, really. A surprise and a mystery. The January 6th committee rushing to add another hearing tomorrow afternoon. It's going to begin at 1 o'clock, but refusing to say who is testifying. A source telling CNN the committee is concerned about the security of a potential witness. What does all this mean? They're adding another person, right? They just decided to do it and they're concerned about security? And they say they have recently obtained evidence. So what does the committee know now that they didn't know before? Meanwhile, the DOJ's investigation is heating up tonight. The lawyer who told then President Trump that Mike Pence could single-handedly block certification of the election, spoiler alert, he could not. That lawyer, John Eastman, says the FBI seized his phone and got access to his email account. Here's the video.
So go ahead and put your arms up for me. Put your arms up for me.
And it happened the same day the feds raided the home of Jeffrey Clark, the former DOJ official who pushed Trump's false election fraud claims. More to come on all of that. Plus, chaos and confusion all across this country in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. More and more states rushing to ban abortion. The latest, South Carolina. A federal judge today allowing the state to ban abortions beginning around 6 weeks. And that makes at least 10 states with bans or severe restrictions. Another 14 where bans or severe restrictions are certain or likely, I should say. So in nearly half this country, a right that Americans have had for almost 50 years is vanishing. And outrage is growing over a court that seems to be out of step with the majority of Americans. 6 in 10 Americans, 6 in 10, disapprove of the court's decision. So what happens when millions of people in this country no longer have faith in the highest court in the land? That's not good. Also a CNN exclusive tonight. The Vice President Kamala Harris, in her first interview since the Roe ruling, warning Clarence Thomas and conservatives on the court could also take away more rights, like the right to birth control, the right to same-sex relationships, the right of gay people, gay couples, to get married.
I definitely believe this is not over. I do. I think he just said the quiet part out loud. And I think that is why we all must really understand the significance of what just happened. This is profound. And the way that this decision has come down has been so driven, I think, by the politics of the issue versus what should be the values that we place on freedom and liberty in our country.
It is a fascinating interview, and we have more on that coming up. Plus, dramatic eyewitness accounts from the deadly Amtrak derailment in Missouri today. The train on its way from L.A. to Chicago, 3 people killed, at least 50 injured.
Yes, sir.
Frightening. A lot going on, but I want to begin with the hastily scheduled hearing by the January 6th committee and what it could mean. Let's discuss with the former FBI Director, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and Nixon White House Counsel John Dean. Good evening to both of you. As I said, this is a mystery. It's certainly suspenseful. I cannot wait to see what happens. John, for the committee to suddenly announce this unexpected hearing, it adds to the intrigue. You say this had better be a big deal. I agree. Why?
Well, I looked back at history to see when they last did a surprise hearing like this with a surprise witness, and it was Alex Butterfield during the Senate Watergate Committee hearing, and he was a big witness, so he set a high bar. So I tweeted that and got a really remarkable reaction from thousands of people, including some well-informed people that told me, don't worry, it's a big deal.
Okay, thousands of well-informed people. We'll see. All right, well, we'll see. Go ahead. You want to respond to that, John?
Well, I might have overspoken on thousands. Some well-informed people, some particularly well-informed people responded and told me, don't worry.
Okay, that's a big deal. Andrew McCabe, CNN is learning that the January 6th committee is concerned about the safety of a potential witness ahead of tomorrow's hearing, and that is according to a source who's familiar with the panel's plans. I mean, it's part of the reason why the committee is being so secretive about who will appear. Give us your read on that. Does that offer any clues to you?
You know, it really doesn't, Don. It's a kind of a strange thing to say. Typically, when you have security concerns for a witness, you would probably try to keep that quiet, and then you would take some action to ensure or to increase the security for that witness, like having a witness testify, behind a screen so that the rest of the world can't actually see who they are, or by changing the tenor of their voice so you could mask that in some way. It's a little bit odd that they drew attention to the fact that somebody is having security concerns. That's not typically the way you would do it, but it's kind of a fascinating mystery. I'd agree with John. They've really drawn a lot of attention to this thing now, so I hope those informed people are correct, that this will actually be something significant.
Or could it be the person that some people wanted to hang on January 6th?
There are a lot of people who have been mentioned conspicuously in the testimony so far. That person, the former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, Jeffrey Clark, John Eastman. There's many people, and I'm not predicting that any of them will be our witness tomorrow, but there are a lot of people who've been referred to repeatedly who maybe have decided, hey, I'm going to go down and sit down and tell my own story in front of the committee. So there's all kinds of possibilities there.
So I guess you guys don't want to say who you think it could be, right? You don't want to go and do that. No?
No chance.
No. And a resounding no
Pure speculation.
from the peanut gallery here. No speculation. Okay, so listen, Andrew, the committee has publicly pressured the former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, as you said, to publicly testify. There's also documentary footage that they recently obtained that included interviews with Trump and his family. Whatever we'll see tomorrow, do you think it's time sensitive? Do you think that they want to get it out as soon as possible? Are they up against the clock somehow? I don't know.
It definitely seems time sensitive to me, Don. I mean, to squeeze this, shoehorn this hearing in on the week before the holiday weekend is really bizarre. Most of Congress is probably home for the weekend at this point. I think, though, time sensitive could also be the committee realizes they got a lot of attention with that hearing last Thursday about the pressure that the administration put on DOJ. That kind of created some positive momentum for these hearings in general. And I would suspect there's time pressure for them to basically finish off that story. If this witness or this evidence has something to do with that narrative, they would want to get it in quickly and in front of people before they forget, 2 weeks goes by before they remember what happened last week. So my guess is that it has something to do with the testimony we heard on Thursday. But again, that's just a guess.
John Dean, if the committee is dealing with a reluctant witness, could that be part of this, getting that person on or before he or she backs out?
That could be the answer, Don, that they want to quickly get that person in. They've agreed to do it, and they want to get them there. But
I thought you said no speculation, John. We said no speculation. All we're doing is speculating, but go on.
As you might have noticed, we contributors do a lot of speculating just across the board. But Andrew's got a good point that I think it is probably connected to the last set of hearings, and they want to tidy that up. And if that would point towards Pat Cipollone, who I think has a moral obligation to appear, and he may well be the one that's coming in. He kind of fits the criteria.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'll just say this. Unless it's a name, a sort of household name, so to speak, if Pat Cipollone comes in, most of the American people are going to be like, who is that? I mean, we're all paying attention. When you say Pat Cipollone, to the media folks or the people who pay attention, we go, oh, wow, that's interesting. To the average American, they don't know, Pat Cipollone from the guy in the deli. I mean, they have no idea. Do you understand what I'm saying, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's probably true for the hearings generally, right? The hearings are, it's a compelling story. It's captivating to those people who have been following this narrative since January 6th on 2021. So there's a whole big part of the country that just is not that interested in learning about this or rehashing it, or they want to purposely avoid it because it's not a pleasant memory for them. So I think, no matter who they put on tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of disappointment out there in terms of people saying, ho hum, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Some of them will be saying that for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I should have. It's Monday. I'm a little slow. By Wednesday, I'm good. Monday, I should have said they won't know that from Adam, is what they're saying. So we're learning that the FBI seized the Trump election attorney John Eastman's phone last week. About 6 federal agents approached him as he was exiting a restaurant, and they got access to his email account. Eastman is calling it improper. How significant is this? Also, would it give them access to any security communications that he may have had? I'll ask Andrew, and then I'll get John in.
He very well might. And, let's remember that in this day and age of encrypted communications on applications like WhatsApp or Signal, the only way that you can get the content of communications between people that use those platforms is to get your hands on one of the handsets, the telephones. That's the only place it gets decrypted. So it is important. The significance is clear. First of all, it took place on the same day as the Jeffrey Clark search warrant, which typically when you're doing a big case and you have multiple search warrants, you try to do them on the same day so one warrant doesn't tip the other one off. To serve a search warrant for the telephone of the former president's lawyer is a very big deal under any circumstances, and one that would definitely have the absolute highest levels of the Department of Justice involved in that decision making. And finally, this one is a little bit strange because according to the Eastman's allegations, you have FBI agents executing a search warrant on behalf of the Department of Justice Inspector General. That is very odd. I am not familiar with, I've not seen that before in my career. There's no question that this warrant is connected to an IG case because the documents used are Inspector General documents, and the file number that they have on that document is not consistent with an FBI case file number. So it's strange to me that the Bureau would have been involved in executing the warrant. It's also a little bit questionable as to why the Department of Justice Inspector General would be investigating a man, John Eastman, who never worked for the Department of Justice. All very interesting questions that hopefully we get to the bottom of soon.
Wow, even more mystery. Now I really want to know. I'm not kidding. John, do you want to respond to that? Because before I want to play the soundbite for you. Do you want to respond to what he said?
I would just add that I think because the Inspector General is doing it, it looks like it's Jeffrey Clark, who is was an employee of the department, and he obviously was dealing with Eastman. So that ties them together, and that's why the FBI probably got the double assignment.
John, this is what we heard from Eastman from the live and tape testimony last week.
And what did Dr. Eastman want you to do?
That we would, in fact, take a vote to overthrow, or I shouldn't say overthrow, that we would decertify the electors.
What did the president say when he called you?
Essentially, he turned the call over to Mr. Eastman, who then proceeded to talk about the importance of the RNC helping the campaign gather these contingent electors.
Do you think he'll ultimately be charged with a crime, John?
Well, I don't know, but there's certainly some appearances of criminal activity here of what he was doing. I debated John Eastman once when he was running for Attorney General of California, and they needed a quick debate. I found his legal thinking at that time strange and unusual. We debated Citizens United, and I just wouldn't be surprised if he had no hesitation crossing the line and was going to find himself in a deep, deep trouble.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrew. Dun, dun, dun. We'll know tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You know what's fascinating? It hasn't leaked. This is Washington, D.C. Are you guys surprised it hasn't leaked?
Yes. You're always surprised things don't leak. Yeah, totally.
The night is still young, sort of.
That's right.
All right.
That's
See
right.
you. Thank you. Coming up, a CNN exclusive, Vice President Kamala Harris in her first interview since the Supreme Court overturned Roe. What she says is shocking about the ruling and what it means for our democracy.
The court actually took a constitutional right that has been recognized for half a century and took it from the women of America. That's shocking.
Living Golf in association with Gulf Saudi.
Henrik Stenson is considered one of the finest golfers to have emerged from mainland Europe. And now the Swede is taking on a new role as the captain of the 2023 European Ryder Cup team.
It's a very proud moment to be announced the captain for the European team. A lot of work. It's already started. People ask me and they go like, oh, really? Already? It's going to be a challenge. It's always been a challenge. As you know, Europe's pretty much every Ryder Cup I can remember. If you look on paper, we've been slight underdogs. So we're looking at the young, emerging and strong players that we have on the European side and seeing how we can integrate them into the team and also get some of the more seasoned veterans to fire up on all cylinders and be ready for Rome.
Living Golf in association with Gulf Saudi. From the tiniest warbler to the mightiest whale shark, nature is on the move, but natural paths are under threat. Now meet incredible conservationists helping species cross highways, span flyways, and get from A to B.
This is nature's highway, and we must protect it.
Call to Earth, protecting nature's highways.
Saturday on CNN.
I am Fahad Hamiduddin, the CEO of the Saudi Tourism Authority. I think if you think of travelers in today's life, they want to immerse in what's authentic. I think people are less looking for, the same old in every place, and they want what is authentic. And I believe that's on us. There are strong commitments that Saudi Arabia is making, like committing to 30% of its land to remain reserves, to rewilding over 21 species, including the Arabian leopard. Or when it's designing its new projects like the Red Sea Project, we're keen to make sure that regenerative tourism sits at the heart of our master planning and product design.
As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, host of CNN's First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley today. The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? African and global industry leaders share their stories. On Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa.
The Vice President, Kamala Harris, saying tonight that when she was in the Senate, she never believed Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh during their confirmation hearings when they testified that Roe v. Wade was settled law. Last week, they voted to overturn it. In 2018, she grilled Brett Kavanaugh about whether the government has the ability to regulate men's bodies.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy that answer a more specific question, but
Male versus female.
there are medical procedures.
Okay? That the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body.
I thought you were asking about medical procedures that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
Interesting, right? Considering what just happened. Harris said she was shocked when the High Court overturned Roe on Friday. She sat down with CNN's Dana Bash for an exclusive interview.
Madam Vice President, thank you so much for having me here. You were on a plane when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. As the highest ranking woman ever elected in U.S. history, what was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, so I was on Air Force Two, heading to Aurora, Illinois, to talk about maternal health. We were with Lauren Underwood, with the chair of Judiciary, Dick Durbin, Senate Judiciary. We were headed there to unveil a plan based on the work we've been doing to ensure that women receive the kind of support they need during and post-pregnancy. And, you know, we thought that the decision would come down sometime soon, but not at that moment. And I was shocked. And, you know, it's one thing when you know something's going to happen. It's another thing when it actually happens. And I just actually turned to CNN, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because they actually did it. And here's what they did. The court actually took a constitutional right that has been recognized for half a century and took it from the women of America. That's shocking when you think about it, in terms of what that means, in terms of democratic principles, in terms of the ideals upon which we were founded about liberty, about freedom. You know, I thought about it as, you know, a parent. We have 2 children who are in their 20s, a son and a daughter. I thought about it as a godparent of teenagers. I thought of it as an aunt of preschool children.
And a woman yourself.
And a woman myself. And the daughter of a woman. And a granddaughter of a woman. And, you know, my husband and I are actually talking about it. We have a 23-year-old, and my mother-in-law's in her 80s. Our daughter will not know the rights for the amount of time that my mother-in-law knew these rights, which is the right that should be well settled, that a woman should have to make decisions about her own body. And when we think about it, everyone has something at risk on this. First of all, if you are a parent of sons, do think about what this means for the life of your son and what that will mean in terms of the choices he will have. Do think about it in the context of the fact that they wrote this decision, including concurring opinions, that suggest that other rights, such as the freedom to make decisions about when you were going to start a family, the freedom and the right to make decisions about contraception, IUDs, what this is going to mean in terms of in vitro fertilization.
Well, let me ask you about that, because Justice Thomas, this is what you're referring to, did write a concurring opinion saying the court should reconsider other cases of precedent that protect same-sex marriage, contraception, intimacy, and more. Do you think that the Supreme Court is on a path to reverse those as well?
I definitely believe this is not over. I do. I think he just said the quiet part out loud. And I think that is why we all must really understand the significance of what just happened. This is profound. And the way that this decision has come down has been so driven, I think, by the politics of the issue versus what should be the values that we place on freedom and liberty in our country, right? The right to privacy. Let's think of this in the context of the laws that are being passed in states. Dana, in 13 states, by my count, they will not allow a woman to have access to reproductive health and to an abortion if she is the victim of rape or incest. So let me tell you something. As a former prosecutor who specialized in crimes of violence against women and girls, in particular child sexual assault and rape, the idea that after a woman has endured such violence to her body, that she would not have the freedom and authority to decide whether she wanted to continue with a pregnancy that is a result of an act of violence is absolutely unthinkable.
So because you are now the Vice President of the United States, part of an administration that is pledging to fight back, to find ways to protect women's rights to abortion, I want to ask you some of the things that are kind of out there that some of your former female senators, Senate colleagues, are asking the administration to do. Will the administration actively challenge state laws that make it a crime for someone to help a woman travel to another state for an abortion?
So the president rightly last week, when the decision came down, indicated quite unambiguously that we will do everything within our power as an administration through the executive branch to ensure that women have access to the medication they need, which has been, by the way, FDA approved, and that they will have freedom of travel and that travel should be unrestricted.
And you're going to do that through the courts if need be?
I am sure that our Department of Justice is going to do that based on every statement that the Attorney General has made.
Can the administration expand abortion access or abortion services on federal land, meaning provide the access on federal land that might be in and around states that ban abortion?
I think that what is most important right now is that we ensure that the restrictions that the states are trying to put up that would prohibit a woman from exercising what we still maintain is her right, that we do everything we can to empower women to not only seek but to receive the care where it is available.
Is federal land one of those options?
I mean, it's not right now what we are discussing, but I will say that when I think about what is happening in terms of the states, we have to also recognize, Dana, that we are 130 odd days away from an election, which is going to include Senate races, right? Part of the issue here is that the court has acted, now Congress needs to act. But we, if you count the votes, don't appear to have the votes in the Senate. Well, there's an election happening in 130 odd days. I'm taking, for example, thinking of a Senate race in Georgia or North Carolina. There's the Senate race coming up just in a couple weeks in Colorado. And we need to change the balance and have pro-choice legislators who have the power to make decisions about whether this constitutional right will be in law, right? We say codified, put it in law so that there will be no ambiguity about it.
And I want to ask you about that in 1 second. Okay. Just a couple of more questions, because what I'm hearing, and you probably are too, is what can this Democratic administration do right now with any executive power that the president has?
Yeah.
Can the administration actually increase access to medication abortion?
I think we're pretty clear that to the extent that we can, we will. There's no question about that, because again, it is FDA approved, and if it is prescribed, if that a woman should be able to have access to it unfettered.
And what about the idea of financial resources? Some form of voucher for travel, child care services, other forms of support for people, for women seeking abortions in states where it's not legal, but they just don't have the means to go elsewhere.
I think you're asking a very important point, making a very important point, which is what are the details that are going to go into ensuring that women have the ability to actually travel without impairment. And we know that on this issue, women who have access to resources will probably be far less impacted by this decision than women who don't have resources. So this is something that we are looking at, because we know, for example, in terms of how this is going to actually impact real people, over half of women who receive abortions in America are moms. That means that if they're going to have to travel, they've got to find daycare and pay for it. It means that they will, if they are working, which most are, they're going to have time from work. And if they don't have paid leave, they're going to have to figure out how to afford it. It means that they may have to put up money for a train or a bus or a plane, much less a hotel. And so we want to make sure that there does not result extreme disparities or any disparities based on who can receive care based on how much money they've got.
Very good interview. CNN's Dana Bash joins me now. Dana, thank you. As I said, it was great reporting there. You also asked Vice President Harris about January 6th and the former Vice President Mike Pence. What did she say to you?
Well, the question that everybody in Washington who is looking at these hearings, the Biden Justice Department is going to at all seek criminal charges against the former President Donald Trump. I asked about that.
The former Vice President, Mike Pence, has your opinion of him changed?
Well, I think that he did his job that day, and I commend him for that because clearly it was under extraordinary circumstances that he should not have had to face. And I commend him for having the courage to do his job.
So there you heard something that you don't hear very often, which is somebody like the vice president who sat for a debate with and against Mike Pence and has not exactly been, they're very much politically diametrically opposed. Yeah. But on this issue, Don, of January 6th, and specifically the role that he played in following his constitutional role on January 6th, she said that she commends him. I mentioned the January 6th prosecution, the potential prosecution of Donald Trump. What she said was, as a former prosecutor, she does not want to comment on another prosecutor's potential case.
Which was the correct answer. Dana Bash, substantive,
yeah.
Informative. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Don.
Democrats looking for ways to protect abortion rights across the U.S. and preparing for rulings that could come on other rights like gay marriage. But do they have any good options? That's the question. Also ahead, an Amtrak train flips on its side after slamming into a truck. At least 3 people killed. We'll have the latest next.
コーヒーの持つ力って人と人をつなぐ力だと思ってて。うちの会社のビジョンっていうのは日本のコーヒーといえばフィロコフィアってなることなんですよ。からそれを達成するには世界に向けた通販が必要だったんですよね。
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Across Africa, businesses are working together like never before. All new on CNN, Connecting Africa.
Join me and Lenny Jokas as we crisscross the continent to show you how new connections are revolutionizing commerce in Africa. This month, Connecting Africa from the Africa CEO Forum here in Côte d'Ivoire.
This forum really brings Africans together.
Connecting Africa on CNN, in association with Afreximbank.
This is a really important story. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN.
Assalamu alaikum.
Day in, day out, you see the reality of people living through this. Ничего страшного. Okay.
This is the front line.
On a human level, you find courage, sacrifice. This is what life is about.
A lot of people are wondering why.
You see the worst of humanity.
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Absolutely terrifying.
But you also see the best of humanity. My My job is to be present.
The human cost is right here.
And to tell these stories.
We're talking about families.
That is the most important thing. I'm Clarissa Ward in Ukraine. This is CNN.
It is forecasted that about 40% of the population in the world will suffer from water shortages in 2050 due to climate change and population growth. And water is one of nature's greatest gift. So we decided to upgrade our water intensity by 50% and replenish more water than we use in our own plants globally by 2050. As a matter of fact, we've been working on this almost for 20 years by setting up a local watershed conservation and education for children. We are moving toward the international and global expansion. We want to raise awareness in the world that water shortages will come, and we have to be careful. We have to take action together. So we want to lead this initiative.
I'm David Culver in Beijing, and this is CNN.
Back with now more in our CNN exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and what America's new reality will look like with abortion bans going into effect in states all across this country. Here to discuss CNN's chief legal analyst, Mr. Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey, good to see you. So, Jeffrey, we're hearing a lot, what can Democrats do, all of this stuff. What do Democrats have when it comes to SCOTUS overall and abortion specifically? Because a lot of options that people are throwing out there that the White House doesn't support, like expanding the court or opening clinics on federal lands.
You know, one of the things politicians never like to admit is they are powerless. And Democrats are pretty powerless when it comes to the Supreme Court and even the whole federal system. Now, I'm not 100% powerless, but this is really now a state matter. And, there are, going to be fights in states. And the states that are going to have the biggest fights are those where control of the state government is really contested. States like Wisconsin, where you have a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature. Same thing in Michigan. Virginia has a Republican governor. But the states that are all Republican, I think they are all in the process of banning or limiting abortion so that it's effectively banned. And I don't think there's a lot that the federal government can do about it.
What the time to talk about options, wasn't it? Shouldn't they have been trying to codify?
They could have. And, it's interesting. Both sides are now talking about codifying abortion law. Mike Pence is saying, if I'm elected president, we're going to pass a law in Congress outlawing abortion in the whole country. Biden and Harris are saying, elect Democrats and we'll pass a federal law legalizing abortion in the whole country. The fact is, it's an unsettled question legally whether the federal government even has jurisdiction over that matter. Mm-hmm. But, you need full control to even try to pass a law like that, and neither Democrats or Republicans have that at this point.
Listen, I agree and disagree with the former. Look, I'm with her on sentiment where he said the quiet part out loud. I just don't think it was so quiet. I don't think he. I think
you're talking about Clarence Thomas.
Talking about Clarence Thomas when he's saying they're going to come after other things like contraception. I don't think it was quiet. I think he's saying it because he means it. That's the only part I disagree with her on. I think she's right because he said that they should start looking at same-sex relationships, same-sex marriage, and contraception. Do you think she's...
I think, I don't know, quiet or loud, but I think, one of the things I've learned studying Clarence Thomas for a long time, I mean, I've been covering the court for basically his entire tenure on the court since 1991, and he says what he means.
Yeah.
He's candid, he's honest. He is the one who led the charge to say that the Second Amendment protects individuals to have, weapons. He has talked about how Roe should be overturned since the Casey decision in 1992. And when he says that those 3 decisions should be overturned, I think he means it. Now, I don't know that he has 5 votes at this point. I think the 3 cases he talked about, contraception, same-sex marriage, and what was the third one? I'm blanking.
We said same-sex relationships, same-sex marriage.
And consensual sexual activity. Yeah. I think the one that is in greatest danger is same-sex marriage, because with the invitation from the Supreme Court, I think there will be at least one state that says, you know what, we are going to outlaw it again. We never agreed to it. It was forced on us by the Supreme Court. We're going to outlaw it again and create a test case. There might be 5 votes for overruling Obergefell. And so, Thomas has said he's already one of them. And if you look at the 3 Trump appointees, if you look at Samuel Alito, you could get to 5 pretty quickly on that.
Why doesn't he feel the same about interracial marriage?
Well, look, let's not be coy about that. Everybody knows he's involved. He's married to a white woman, and so some people think, oh, he's not talking about Loving versus Virginia, which is the interracial case. In his defense, that case was also about privacy, like the abortion cases, but it also had a racial dimension, which makes it a somewhat different substantive due process case.
Still didn't mention it.
I know. I'm trying to be fair here, Don.
And Loving was just a couple years before Roe. I mean, I'm just saying.
Look, it was a conspicuous absence, but you could articulate a reason why it's different.
Let's talk about this. This is a new CBS News YouGov poll finds that 59% of Americans do not approve of the court's move to overturn Roe, and support for the court was already at an historic low before this. What is this sort of hyper-partisan decisions? What do they mean for the court's legitimacy?
One justice I covered a lot was Sandra Day O'Connor, and she was always very concerned about never having the court too far out of step with public opinion. She was very open and candid about that. This group of conservatives is very different. And to be honest, it's interesting, but it's not, I don't think it has that big an impact. So what? So people don't approve.
I agree.
I just don't. People say, well, it's going to hurt the court's legitimacy. Their decisions are still their decisions,
and they
still have the last word. So unless it gets to be some overwhelming rejection, I don't think it has much significance, that polling.
Do you think that the court is, I want to get the exact thing that people are telling me. They said that the SCOTUS is now firmly in the hands of white Christian supremacists. Religion-based bigotry prevails. That is a sentiment. What do you think?
That's not the way I like to talk about the court. I do think the court is in the hands of extremely conservative Republicans who have a very specific agenda on lots of different issues, including limiting the regulatory powers of the government about climate change. That's a decision that's due on Wednesday that is maybe as earth-shaking in its importance as Dobbs is. I mean, keep an eye on it. It's West Virginia, the West Virginia case. So, they want to limit the regulatory power. Next year, they are going to hear the affirmative action case out of Harvard. Close to a lock that they are going to outlaw affirmative action in this country. Right. They are lowering the barriers between church and state. Obviously, they overturned Roe versus Wade. This is their agenda. I don't use epithets like that, but that the agenda is very clear.
You said extremely conservative. Is it fringe, or do you?
I think Mitch McConnell made sure that these justices got confirmed. I think it illustrates that the Republican Party of 2022 is incredibly different from the Republican Party of the 90s. 1992, the decision that upheld Roe, the Casey decision, 5-4, all 5 justices in the majority were Republicans. Now
look
none.
where we are. Thank you, Jeffrey.
That's the difference.
I appreciate
it, buddy.
We have to talk about this as a deadly derailment in Missouri. This happened after a passenger train collided with a truck. The latest on that next.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
From the tiniest warbler to the mightiest whale shark, nature is on the move, but natural paths are under threat. Now meet incredible conservationists helping species cross highways, span flyways, and get from A to B.
This is nature's highway, and we must protect it.
Call to Earth, protecting nature's highways.
Saturday on CNN.
I was trafficked at the age of 18. I was a single young mom trying to figure out how to put myself through school. I was lured off of a college campus in Eugene, Oregon, and I was trafficked to Las Vegas mainly for nearly 6 years. My name's Rebecca Bender, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Rebecca Bender Initiative. The way that we mentor survivors of human trafficking is through our initiative called the Elevate Academy. Elevate Academy is really a holistic school that invites survivors to join a cohort of other people just like them. They get a mentor, they get a life coach. We help take them through a number of classes, some of which are really about deeper levels of healing. When I was able to finally escape from my trafficker, I can remember during that time I had been traded and sold between 3 different traffickers. I had 2 men tattoo their names on my back like a piece of cattle. I have been to jail multiple times. Had my face broken in 5 places. I was really hopeless and I didn't know how I was going to get out. Finally, a federal investigation led to my trafficker's arrest, and I went home to a family that was really supportive. But we know in this fight against trafficking that that's not the case for everybody. So not only am I really grateful, but I'm also really determined to help communities learn how to be that family for survivors that are trying to rebuild their lives.
This is a disturbing story that could affect all of us. Everyone drives, we're in the car, trains and that thing. 3 people are dead, at least 50 are injured. Following an Amtrak train derailment in Missouri, that train carrying around 243 passengers, it derailed when it hit a dump truck at an uncontrolled railroad crossing. The NTSB announcing that they are launching a GO team to investigate. Let's discuss now. Mary Schiavo is here. She is a former Inspector General at the Department of Transportation and a CNN aviation analyst. Mary, thank you for joining us. Good to see you. I wish it was under better circumstances, of course. What is this NTSB team going to be looking for when they get to the scene?
Well, the NTSB team is going to be aided first and foremost by the black box on the train. The black box on the train has forward-looking equipment. They'll be pulling the camera. It will have the train speed when the whistles and horn was sounded. There are regulations on how far before the crossing the audible signals have to be sounded. The speed of the train, when the engineer and train control personnel applied the brakes, that will give them an idea of when they saw the obstruction on the track. So because of that black box, they're going to have an awful lot of information to start with. And of course, they will have also gathered information about the track conditions, which railroad owns that particular section of track, and information about the signage. Apparently, it was just the standard crosshatch, crossbuck sort of sign, not any lights or gates or arms, but they will have all that in advance. And then, of course, once they get there, the hard work starts of looking at the train, the controls, measuring everything, and also the situation of the actual roadway going over the track. So they've got a lot to do.
This accident occurred, Mary, at an uncontrolled, as you said, this crossing, meaning that there were no lights. You mentioned there were no mechanized arms. So what about what happened? Tell us, what's that tell us about what happened here? Anything?
Well, it's hard to judge at this point, but every year about 250 people are killed at crossings because of this. This is a far fewer number than there were, say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it averaged about 750 a year, but every year, well over 1,000 accidents happen like this where someone travels over the road and intersects with the train. So it's difficult to tell at this point whether the vehicle was stuck on the track, whether it was a situation where couldn't move out fast enough, or did not hear or see the train. And sadly, some accidents are because people try to beat the train. The Federal Rail Administration and the Department of Transportation has had a great public campaign to educate people. Never try to do that. Of course, we don't know if that happened here. It would help, of course, if there were cameras at railroad crossings like there are at intersections in, cities and all over the country looking for speeders. There you could do that as well, but there are not. So they will have to judge what occurred at that crossing based on the conditions and if there were any eyewitnesses or ear witnesses.
Mary, thank you. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Big developments in the January 6th investigation. The FBI seizing the phone of the former Trump election attorney John Eastman, and a surprise announcement that the committee will hold another hearing tomorrow. We're going to talk about all of that. That is next.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
The missile struck right here. What is your interpretation of Putin's intention?
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine to date?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What are you looking at for the future with these additional formations that you've talked about, and where? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? Is it enough?
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
We are doing this for our very survival.
What do you think a peace or a ceasefire or an end to this looks like?
And fully understand what's at stake.
We have will, we have guts, and we are fighting like hell.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.